Imagine we're all just chilling in a room and I'm telling a story. I'm just gonna read children's books to you guys. This is our children's books, you know. Irminsul doesn't erase children's books and like allegory stories, so it's me reading bedtime stories to you all. It's gonna be very cute. So everyone grab a plushie, grab some blankets, okay? We'll have a little bit of like liquor or wine if you like to drink. If you don't like to drink, that's totally fine. Grab a plushie, get comfy, and that's all that matters. We're all here to be comfy. The Tale of Those Without Shadows. Once this land was home to a group of people without shadows. They left simple lives, knowing nothing about the world outside the place where they lived. This lasted until one day, when a lost adventurer discovered them. The shadowless folk were shocked to find that the adventurer had lockstep an attendant, silent and loyal. The adventurer too was shocked to see that people lived in the world who could not cast a shadow because of the sunlight. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would make such a discovery, said the adventurer. Dreams? We have not had those in a long time, said one of the shadowless people. Our elders tell us that all dreams have already been dreamed. Shadows hide the secrets of the soul. You have no shadow. And that's why you do not dream, said the adventurer. Perhaps you did once have shadows, just like you once did dream. Is that so? Where shall I go to find which I have lost? Go to the secret forest. Many dreams dwell there, and perhaps those who capture dreams may have yet some extra to share for you. And so the young shadowless person left his homeland behind, traveling far off to visit the secret forest the adventurer had spoken of. This forest was filled with layers of shadows, the shadows of the clouds, tree canopies. Even the tiny birds cast large shadows over the soft soil. Day after day he passed between the crisscross shadows. Shadows hide the soul's secrets, he thought, and perhaps he was the only one here without any secrets. And so, one day, he discovered that all dreamscapes were open to him, for he had no dreams, but it was because of this that he could enter the dreams of others. In many dreams he witnessed, the birds dreamed of vivid colors, the tiger of fragrant scents. Tiger of fragrant scents? Okay. But he did not see those who captured dreams, nor did he discover the excess dreams that were spoken of. The dreams, the shadows, and the beings that dwelt here could be matched for one for one, and he wondered if the adventurer had cheated him, and if there really was no such thing as a masterless dream, just as there was no such thing as a shadow without a source. But just as he was about to admit defeat, that one who captured dreams found him. Their encounter happened within a dream of a seashell. He barged into its ending, searching for the white waves and salty wind, but neither can be found in its saddened aftertaste. Just like this shell, you do not belong to this forest. The speaker was a woman, and he quickly realized that she was the dream captor the adventurer spoke of, for her shadow had a strange mottled texture like a drapery encrusted with gems. I've been looking for you, he said. Perhaps you have some extra dreams. They pass like the morning dew, she said, and there was no sadness in her voice. Masterless dreams cannot last long. I've tried so many times, but they've always dissipated in the end. See, just like the seashell, we both must leave. Taking his hand, she led him from this fading dream, bereft of white waves and salty winds. Besides a murmuring brook, she told him a great many of stories and taught him how to enter dreams. After that, she warned him a couple of times concerning the taboos of the dream captors, such as how they should never gaze repeatedly into another's dream, for their scents are like a bottomless well. The nightmares are more cunning than you can imagine. Once they discover that you're here, discover what you have done, they will arise like a swarm and drag you out into the darkness. You will not be able to leave this place, a boundary where no shadows are. If you wait long enough, you'll be able to make out meaningful words, names that linger in faded memories that no longer belong anywhere. And you know that you must not speak the names of the dead or they'll seek you out. I once believed that none of you had shadows, he said honestly. I once believed that dream captors did not have their own dreams, which is why they collected those that belonged to others. The woman did not reply, her mottled shadow swaying in the night like a leaf. But the young shadowless man was too eager for the answer, and though the dream captor defended the shadows well, he found it his chance nonetheless. Unlike the dreams of the forest beings, whose dream gates were wide open, it was a rugged path that led to the dream captor's dreamscape. It seemed evident to him that she had hidden her secrets in other dreams, he thought. But what were her secrets, and whose dreams were these? The dream captor's dreams were many-layered, just like the secret forest, and so he lost his way, and before he knew it, the nightmares were upon him. I have broken the dream captor's taboo, but even if I can see that bottomless well, I cannot find my answer, he thought. She said that if I stayed long enough, I might be able to make out the name from their voices. At least that way, I will know whose dream this is. And so he allowed himself to be led to the depths, and just as the woman had warned him, it was a boundless, lightless realm. He listened then for the tiny sounds, hoping to find words that could point to a name. An unknown period of time passed before he finally heard a name amidst the scattered sounds. The sound had a strange, natural attraction to him, and he could not help but recite it. Then he opened his eyes. "I saw a strange light," he said. "I saw that a woman had entered my dreams and stolen secrets of my soul that I didn't know existed, and since that day, I no longer had a shadow. And I heard her say this, and she called me." "You know," she said, interrupting him, "that one should not speak the names of the dead, or they will seek you out." The dream captor sat by the murmuring brook, her mottled shadow swaying in the wind like a leaf. "That is but a tale about the dead. I have told you such tales before, but there are many more that have yet to be told." And so, the dream captor continued to tell the young man, with no shadow a story that none have heard yet. The tale of Daster. Once upon a time, there was a Vahumana Daster who traveled alone to the desert depths to investigate the ruins of the ancient realms. Unfortunately, he encountered a sandstorm and lost his way, but just as he was about to breathe his last, a young woman with amber eyes appeared before them. She parted with the howling sands with a staff in her hand and led him out of the desert. It was already noon by that time they reached the village. She treated him to lunch at her home and offered to escort him back to the caravan ravat. But after seeing her part in the sands as if by some spell, and how she had chased the dark beasts along their pathway, the Daster refused to leave, instead asking if she could teach him the secret arts of the ancient lands. The mage replied that her amber eyes could see all that the living and the dead had not seen. People without shadows, a bronze clock whose pendulum swing by the hours of imagination, whales that have never left a land, a city that only exists by reflected moonlight upon a silver mirror, a scholar imprisoned within eternity, a high tower hanging upon 7 strings. She could see that he had infinite potential and a boundless future ahead of him, and he was indeed willing to teach him all she knew. But she had one worry, that after learning all, he would seek his own profit and come to deny her. The Daster knelt to the ground and kissed the tip of her shoes, promising that he would never forget that she had done for him no matter what, and that he would never deny her, even if they should then die together. His earnestness touched the young mage, and smiling gently, she helped him up. Holding his hand, she brought him to the door with her basement, saying that she would indeed take him as her disciple, and that all her secrets were hidden in her underground library. And so they walked down the winding stairs, level after level, with a mirror hung on the wall of each level, reflecting their faces and the feeble light of lit sconces? If I pronounced that wrong, that's on me. They walked for who knows how long, and perhaps several hours, perhaps several minutes, for the darkness had obscured their sense of time. At the end of the stairs was a narrow gate, and behind the gate was a hexagonal library. He could not see the ceiling, nor could he estimate the height of this room, but the books in here nonetheless far surpassed all he imagined was possible for knowledge. He learned well under her tutelage, but after a few weeks, envoys from the Temple of Silence would come to the Daster and tell him his mentor had passed on due to illness, that owing to his thesis passing the review, the academia had decided to make an exception for him and promote him to Herbad, that he might take over from his mentor and continue to educate more students. The newly appointed Herbad was greatly pleased, yet he was unwilling to leave yet, and so he carefully asked the mage if she could bring some of her books and come with him to the academia, and from there continue to teach him. She agreed to his invitation, but that said, that she had a sister who had always longed to learn at the academia but was ultimately not accepted due to her desert heritage. Thus, if she asked if Herbad could take her own as an auditing pupil, ew, okay, at least you don't have to pay money, I guess, right? You don't have to pay money to attend a college, right? The Herbad replied that the academia had strict testing processes and he could not make such exceptions, not even to take someone on as an auditing pupil. The mage, for her part, said nothing more, simply packing her bags and following him to Sumeru. Several years later, the sage of Vahumana passed on, thanks to earth-shaking thesis he had been able to write and complete with the aid of the mage. It was unsurprising that the Herbad was recommended to become the new sage. The mage went to congratulate him and asked if he might take his sister on as an auditing student now that he had the position of a sage. The newly appointed sage rejected her, saying he had no duty to do this, for he had no longer needed her guidance, being someone who no longer needed to write theses. He advised her to return to her village and live out the rest of her days in peace. The mage said nothing more, and packed her bags and returned to the desert. Several years later, the Grand Sage too passed, and the Vahumana stage was selected to take its post. Hearing this news, the mage hurriedly from the desert. Finding him, she knelt at his feet and kissed the tip of his shoe, reminding him of the promise he had made to her, begging him to take those of her tribe who had been displaced by the sandstorms in, and allowing them to have refuge beneath the rainforest bower. The Grand Sage was furious and threatened to hurl her into jail or bronze or leave her to die of starvation and thirst, for he did not know this charlatan of the desert wastes. And who was she anyway, to coerce the academia? The sage, no longer young, lifted her head, wiping the tears from her cheeks, and looked upon the Grand Sage one last time with her turbid anward eyes. She begged that she might be allowed to return to her village and help her tribe's people. Refusing, the Grand Sage had his soldiers bind her. And so the sage said little more to save him, only this. That case, I must ask you, sir, to return to your own village. The Grand Sage had startled, and when he had lifted his head and found himself standing there before Caravan Ribat, the night had grown long and the distant village could no longer be seen clearly, shrouded as it is now with the flying dust and sand at night's own cloak. The young woman stood before him, smiling, and her amber eyes reflected how she appeared in this moment, the Dasta of Vahumana, whose thesis had yet to pass review. Well then, the hour is late, and she returned to the academia now. After all, just as the stories say. Use accent change like thrice. No, you're right. I got so tired towards the longer and longer it goes, the harder and harder it is to keep up the accent. Alright, volume 3. This is gonna be really bad. I feel it in my bones. The tale of the prince and the sumpter beast. Long, long ago, when Port Olmos was still ruled by seafaring days, there was one valiant day amongst their number. He was the subjugator of countless isles and domains, thus obtaining many curious treasures and becoming second to none in wealth throughout the port. Yet this mariner's life had left him time for but a single son like his latter years, and passed away before the prince would reach his adulthood. Not reach his childhood, that's two different things. The day's son had inherited his great wealth, but had no power over his father had ministered. Guided by the elders who lacked moral fiber, he quickly began to live the life of a sensuous animal. The prosperous streets of Port Ormos were like a beast that swallowed gold, and so Day's inheritance was emptied by the princeling within a few years, even saddling him with a massive debt in the process. By the time the prince came to his senses, the walls of his home were bare, and not a single mora can be found within. After selling his estates and dismissing the servants, the prince, with nowhere to go, sought refuge at a shrine to an ancient patron of god mariners, which through the patronage of his father, in turn had attained his current august stature. There are so many consonants. I'm dying. Young prince, the priest said, the fates of the mortals have long been ordained by the gods, and they must accomplish those fates themselves. Since you desire to turn over a new leaf, should you not begin through the hard work rather than relying on opportunism? The prince quickly replied, my father was a great patron of the shrine, so if we must argue, half the golden statues and indeed your expenses should belong to me by right. Am I not here to claim this debt I am owed? arrogant prince. Will you make an enemy of the gods? The prince said with a sigh. Yet on your father's account, if you shall promise to keep your place and manage your finances well, I shall tell you how to become wealthy. So the prince swore upon the divine statue. The prince directed him to the street market at the outport. Coming to said market, the prince met a woman dressed in a great finery tending to an emancipated sumpter beast. Esteemed lady, the prince yelled, is there anything I might do for you? You've come at a good time, the woman replied. I must go out and see, and why did she suddenly turn British by accident? I must go out to sea on an urgent errand, and I fear that there is no one who can help me take care of this beast. But if you will aid me, I shall return in 3 months and pay you 10 million mora. The prince was overjoyed at this. But, the woman continued, you must not feed this beast till it's full, nor can you speak to it. Otherwise, even that which you know now you shall lose. And what do I have to lose? The prince thought to himself, and thus agreed readily. The woman then entrusted the sumpter beast to him. 3 months passed quickly, and the woman requested. Not once did he completely fill the sumpter beast's stomach, nor did he speak one word to it until the final day. On this day, the prince, excited with the thought of his soon-to-be reward as he sat before a fire, spoke to the sumpter beast. Oh, good sumpter beast, it is thanks to you that I shall be rich again. So why did he turn southern? If you have a request, name it, and I shall satisfy it for you. Hearing these words, the sumpter beast cried, Oh, honored prince, I have no other wish but to have a full stomach on the last day. Hearing the sumpter beast speak, the prince was greatly shocked and allowed his curiosity to take over, forgetting all about the woman's instruction. Turning around, he bought water and hay from the feeding trough. My most gentle prince, the now full sumpter beast said slowly, I was once a god who served the heavens and ruled over vassal kings in the west. I did not read that right. The kings of the desert, but I was cheated by that venomous witch and forced into this form. If you will have mercy upon me and release me into the desert, I swear upon the king of the blazing sun that I will grant you wishes beyond counting, more by far than what the witch can give. The prince felt dubious about the sumpter beast's words, and so he decided to hide it, and then conceal himself in the corner and wait for the woman's return. She did indeed return the next day, only to find both the prince and the sumpter beast missing. Faithless wretch, the woman cursed. If I catch you, I shall seal you in the smallest magic bottle I can find, and there you shall face eternal torment. Seeing her thus, the prince finally believed that the sumpter beast's words. Once she had left, she prepared the release of the poor animal. As it was about to leave him, it would say to him, O merciful prince, may all the desert gods defend you. I shall fulfill my promise and grant you those endless riches and happiness. I can only ask that you do not ask where they came from, nor else you will lose even that which you may have now. Following the sumpter beast's directions, the prince came to a hidden place at the edge of the desert, and he was indeed discovered a mighty and luxurious palace. Its walls were decorated with gold and gems, and its gates were made of pure gold. And the lovely male servant, leading many lovely ladies out of the great doors to receive him. And thus did the prince once again lead an opulent life. Every day, each male servant would bring him silver, gold, pearls, and gems. Rare delicacies and fine wine were his to enjoy, and each day brought in unique dancing girls to keep him company, and thus was such his life for 3 years. But he thought to himself, I'm tired now of my life today, and I'm in need of new thrills. I've lost the accent. It's gone. I don't know where it went. Now, was it not because I refused the instruction of the witch that I gained this life of mine? Who would then say if the sumpter beast did not hide something from me for fear that I might discover his secret? If I can find the source of this limited wealth, surely greater happiness shall be mine. And so the sumpter beast summoned his faithful servant and said to him, My most loyal servant, could you please tell me of the source of the golden gems, wine, and spirits, even if these musicians and courtesans that you bring before me each day? Of course, my respected master, the manservant replied. Each day I traverse the land between the desert and this place, and all that you enjoy is drawn thereof. Your lovely dances with once swaying desert eels, the glittering gold and endless sands, and the gourmet meals you enjoy are my own personal make. And I, your loyal servant, the manservant paused, and not but a humble scarab. Be a bug. Oh, this is like Cinderella. Just as he finished speaking, the glorious palace dissolved in an instant. The prince found that he was seated upon a squat sand dune, and there was nothing around him apart from crawling insects. After a long while, he regained his senses, and through his shock and terror, he felt in the hand of grief and regret. And now that he had lost, he could not be easily regained. The prince was last reduced to a wandering, never to feel happiness again. From then on, he would tell anyone who wished him to speak his story. Chapter 4 of 1,000 Nights, the Tale of the Researcher. Once upon a time there lived a researcher, upon whom all the hallmarks of the haughty man of letters might be seen. Thought of himself, and we shall be generous to him here, it was not the best among his peers. Knowledge is like a fruit after all, and time quickly whittles its freshness away. If you cannot eat it all while he's still juicy and full, the west shall taste like a sweet decay. Time, the young researcher said, you truly are my hated foe, even more so than I consider my colleagues. Alas, the innate characteristics such as laziness cannot be so easily shaken off. Thus did the winters turn into summers, and back again, bringing his hated colleagues glory and praise, while he left with the scars of bygone years. Perhaps this was some trick of fate, but our main character would indeed discover a way to make his wish a reality, quite by accident, in fact. Time seems fair, though it was but a veneer. I am not as quick-witted as the others. It is not due to a lack of talent. Nay, 'tis but the cruelty of time, so thought the researcher, now no longer young. Now that my chance has come, I will use it well. And so he made his wish to the injured genie. I wish for the time to be just so that I might write better theses. And the genie understood him quite easily, saying, all things come with a price. Well, yes, I have clearly paid part of that toll, he said, shrugging. I have wasted my youth on pointless pursuits. Now things have come to this point, I no longer desire common joys. I only wish to leave behind a work of stunning brilliance, that my name will be praised for generations. Nor do I wish for my work to be left on the perishable ink and paper, but it shall instead be carved into stone. Thousands of years on, my mark shall be still left upon this world, and this way I have my justice. I shall triumph over time. If that is your will, the genie replied non-committally, fulfilling the researcher's wish nonetheless. But whatever that was, truly a genie or some demon in disguise, was quite the matter of contention, especially in hindsight. Leaving this matter aside, the researcher whose wish was fulfilled found that everything had now become so compared to his thinking. Good, good. Now then, my agility of mind shall not be a problem. At first, the researcher was most pleased. Now that he had ample slack, so to speak, there was much time for thoughtful consideration. The time it took for sand grain to fall to the earth, not sufficient for him to raise his left hand to touch his forehead, but his mind could sprint during this time, from forest to desert, from vast to plain to snowy tundra, it could run indeed. He cursed all the pages of a book that could not be laid out flat, but had to be flipped one by one. Even that they had been laid out before him, his eyeballs could have failed to move quickly enough. By the time his eyes had finished resting upon a single word, he would already have exhausted all the vocabulary related to that word and all imagination pertaining to that vocabulary. I think too much and write too little, the researcher thought afterwards. I must use the most elegant words to write the most academically rigorous paper. But when he had penned the first word, his thoughts had already leaped to the conclusion, and so he had to constantly repeat the essay to himself. As he silently dictated the text, it would become more and more refined. Yet this could only happen in his mind. When all was said and done, his right hand had yet even to write 7 words. And thus was his great work, comprised of the finest lexicon and stoutest logic, compromised by the researcher's own body. Every passage came out tattered, as if someone had shredded every page and put them back together haphazardly. The words that were connected felt like fragments randomly selected from complete text, and no one could really grasp the connection between them. It was on a starless night when he, with all his strength, like one completing a centuries-long exodus, managing to weave his study, arriving at the courtyard downstairs. Perhaps speaking shall be more direct than writing, he said, a single bare thread of hope remaining in his heart, but his voice seemed to stumble after the weave of his thoughts. His syllables came out disjointedly and fragmentary, as if the intent behind the words had changed even as they were being said, and so they came out as mere mumbling and whispering. Alas, this poor old fellow, one might almost think he had been possessed, so said the well-dressed young folk who looked upon him with sympathy, but at least he still had the moon. They left after saying these words, leaving the researcher alone in the moon-bathed courtyard, trapped in the prison he once called a body. then the mere husk of a mortal man began to recall the story that he once read. I did it in 3 minutes. Let's go. I read the whole chapter in 3 minutes.
Streamer, can I get a gang woo?
Gang woo. How's that? Does that work? The determination is beautiful. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I have a request. What's up, Rue? What's happening? Asian uncle accent? What, like Uncle Roger? As an Asian, I give you permission. I am an Asian myself, and I low-key cringe every time someone does like an Asian accent. I'm not gonna lie. Night after night, she could always dream about that distant place. It is intricate structure formed of infinite corners, arcades, and passages, and at each corner could hung a silver mirror with guided frame. How's that? I would actually die trying to read this entire book like that. Please do more. That's one more. I'll read the first paragraph. It was said that the king spent 200 years. 6 years more than must be added if one wishes to follow the numbering of each years in those days to design this place. And when seated upon the throne, he could gaze into any mirror. And though this is exclusively planned and winding paths of light, one could glimpse any corner of his realm. Yet when she looked into the mirrors at the end of the hallway in her dream, all she could see was a blurry image, that of a young masked woman garbed in fine raiment, wearing lovely ornament, walking through the opulent corridor like a heat gaze in the flaming gold of day. She knew that then her purpose, though it might seem strange, she wished to gain an audience with the king and tell him something, for these words had been put into heart and they were not hers to command, though she would leave those words somewhere in the gaping mirror lights each time she awoke with a start. Year after year, in her dreams as clear as dawn, she would try and fail to find the way to the throne. Nor did she ever witness that king in person. The young lady who was once lost among the mirrors was now a famed magician, and even so, in those stolen dreaming moments, in those flashes of unconscious lucidity, those fantastical thoughts still had her soul in their iron grip. One day, the great mage discovered clues to reaching that distant kingdom at last. Forsaking all that the worldly might hold dear, she set out on the journey alone. Across the mottled moonlight she sailed, through her shadowed valleys she strode, and the darkest forest she braved, until she at last reached that realm of her dreams. But alas, alas, that city had been annihilated in a terrible fire a few years ago, and the once prosperous kingdom was now no more. It is just as the poets say. The morning breeze is forgotten by all, song and color have faded from sight. Only the dim gleam of towers tall lights the ruined barren night. She entered the devastated palace and walked amidst the ruins. The myths of their gilded frames had long been shattered, the naught but shattered rack remaining, each splinter reflecting a beam of chilling moonlight. The court was not as bizarre or strange as it had been in her dreams. In a few more corners and a few corridors, she was knocking on the door of her throne room. It was a circular hall with hundreds of mirrors hanging from the stone walls, through like mirrors in the hallways. These had almost been destroyed. The mage subconsciously walked towards that long-vacated throne and sat down, gazing her gaze upon one that still holds mirrors. In that mirror she beheld again that masked young woman garbed in fine raiment, walking amidst the opulent halls, and behind her the mirrors that had never been shattered, reflected 1,000 reflections of her form. She startled and raised her head, for that young woman now stood before her, silently watching, unimaginable pain in her eyes. The mage had only just thought of something to say when the woman drew a dagger before stabbing her in the heart. A lustrous bloom graced the silent tip of the blade as flames ignited all around them, consuming the hall she had once been destroyed by a great blaze once more. She smiled in confusion, astonishment, and relief, for the woman then took her mask off, revealing the features of her mage herself, dry lips quivering ever so slightly. This time the mage could finally hear the other person's words that had become lost across the decades and centuries within the labyrinth dream, and its eventide bewilderment was a story told by her to herself, a story reflected in 1,000 of shattered silver slivers of silver echoing on and on forever. This is a story of an old bird chaser. North of the kingdom lies in a dense forest. It's home to a flock of birds that can mimic the words of humans. They often gather like clouds in the break of dawn. As they fly in the forest, iridescent hues dance on their spread wings. Their chatters echo around these tree grounds. But these creatures are not alone, for an old frail man dressed in tattered rags always comes and spends all day chasing after them like a savage. Just like how a towering tree was once tender and delicate, an old man used to be fair and handsome. He grew up in a village by the forest, agile and kind, and he was much well loved by all. Every girl in the village adored him, but his heart fluttered only for his love, a young priestess serving in the forest who always fascinated him with miracles of the divine. The young man often thought that he would give up on anything to be with the girl until death did them part. Alas, that which sweet never ends. Oh, Jesus, that's so hard to read. A grueling war broke out and the young were conscripted, including the man. Before he left for the battlefield, he saw his love weep for the first time. Tears rolled down her cheeks like dew falling from a green leaf, then down to his heart. Yet little did he know the actual reason behind the girl's melancholia. He made hasty promises, wishing to ease the girl's sorrow, one caused by departure, as then he naively believed. With grief written all over his face, the girl gave no response to his beautiful vows. After a brief silence, she said that she would send talking birds to relay her words of longing. It was unusual use of power, but the young man took her act as a means to secure his love, so he nodded. The young man departed the next day to honor his duty to his kingdom. It would soon be over, he thought, but reality eventually proved him wrong. The war dragged on and on. It was not until stubble grew upon his chin and his eyes and hands became battle-hardened that the dust finally settled. His only solace in the brutal war was the birds from his hometown. As if guided by gods, they always managed to come to him on quiet nights, carrying her words, the whispers of her bittersweet longing, telling him of changes of the village, or few short verses she wrote him. This sustained separation had not diminished his love for her. Instead, his love was only a monument. It was driven into his heart. When the war finally ended, he hurried home to propose to his beloved, only to find that she had died of an acute illness on a cold night shortly after his departure. The young man refused to accept it, for he had just been visited by a talking bird the previous day, when his young priestess read him beautiful prose through its mouth. He broke into the girl's closed chamber. Just as sunlight filled the dim room, it stirred what was inside, countless enchanted birds waiting to be awakened from their rich slumber. In a single instant, the birds rushed past him, wings flapping by his ears, and flew through the open door into the sky like an ethereal cloud, returning to their home. At last, the young man stood alone, his love empties room before him. It finally dawned on him why the girl had made such an unusual arrangement, that saddened expression on her face when the night they departed. It had been an arrangement for a lifetime. On her dying bed, she must be taught the bird's countless words, more enough to fill his every night since a flicker of light. Birds live far longer than humans think. From that day on, the young man had been chasing the talking birds in the forest. In their voices, he seeks to catch her lingering soul, to repent for his sin of scattering her love in the woods. Maddened yet tireless, the young man had not stopped his chase for a single day as he turned into a middle-aged man, then in age to an old man. Then talking birds now speak nothing of new, and their numbers have dwindled. But what if there was still that which she had not yet met, one with something from her that she had not yet known? The obsessive trap. Me fucking clicking on this is annoying me. The obsessive traps the bird chaser in the forest, and upon his face is written the toil of years. He skillfully sets up traps very catch the birds and keeps them in a cage, stroking their necks, playing with them, and giving them the best cereals and clearest water. Then he'll say to them, "Speak, talking birds, speak of my love, who the forest favored so dearly. Speak of what she had taught you." And so the generously fed birds will tell such a story. That was that was so hard. How do you guys do this? I will read the first 2 sentences in the toad voice. How about that? Mysteries created and conceals, the sun and moon omens reveal. 3 corners in darkness shrouded, the void by 5 saints clouded. I know this is supposed to be a relaxing stream, and I'm so sorry for whoever's eardrums I just broke out. Do the Meowth voice just once? Okay, I will read the same sentence in the Meowth voice. Mysteries creation conceals, the sun and moon omens reveal, three corners in darkness shrouded, the void by five saints clouded. Mysteries creation conceals, the sun and moon omens reveal, three corners in darkness shrouded, the void by five saints clouded. The universe has no beginning and no end, and so it was with the land that once was. But this matters not for us, for the land that bears no longer has anything to do with that eternity without start or ceasing. So said the lone sage Aberaku, the first Sunchild. The Sunchild had long intended to punish Aberaku. Summoning the sage before the throne in this manner was but an additional way of making things difficult for him before detaining him. Legend has it that Aberaku opened up to wisdom by Tokoyo Okami and was thus able to bring light to Enkanomiya, which had till then never seen the sun. But the Sunchild grew jealous of his talents, thus imprisoning him for life. Yet these children of the sun would never consider that Aberaku had not created an underground star. They would never have existed in the first place. The origin of heaven and earth is like the chicken and egg, and there are not dragons and snakes kin? No sooner had the sage Aberaku uttered these words than he was overthrown by troops lying in ambush. At that time, Enkanomiya had only just been bought by some room to breathe by the appearance of the sun. The Dragonairs loved the dark and shunned the light, and thus could no longer act with impunity. The days when the Dragonairs would rampage of graze upon humanity with so much grass had at least come to an end, for the people of Enkanomiya finally had the means to resist. Yet it came to pass that the flaws in human nature would rear their ugly heads even before such outside threats could be quelled. The people chose the Sunchild, crowned him king and worshipped him, yet he ruled with a brutal hand, framing the righteous. Unnumbered years would pass before the young child of Enkanomiya would take wager with his peeps. Alone he would dive beyond three corners, evading the trail of the Dragonairs in search of the dragonborn flower. But what he found instead was in great cavern was a mighty serpent, one he had never seen before. Somehow he grazed upon the serpent's titanic form. The child felt no fear, but instead a kind of kinship. I am the profane serpent. Through my servants are numberless. Not one mortal now dwells in my shadow. That I have fallen onto this realm, and that which we should meet. Perhaps this was fate. You're not one of my people, but you're human nonetheless. Speak your desire, and I shall hear it. Could you then perchance become our god? Thus did they, human and serpent, go forth to face the royal authority of the Sunchild and the incursions of the Dragonairs beyond. Thus was this curtain raised upon the turning of the tide. What we wish to record is the tale of how heavens will took the shape of the earth below. O heavenly gods, these creations are your works. Grant us divine wisdom. Let us endlessly record. When the doves held branches. When the eternal throne of the heavens came, the world was made anew. Then the true Lord, the primordial one, came forth and did battle against the seven terrifying sovereigns, dragon lords of the old world. The primordial one created shining shades of itself, and the number of these shades were 4. On fanes of the primordial one. The primordial one may have been fanes. It had wings and a crown and was birthed from an egg, androgynous in nature. But when the world to be created, the eggshell had to be broken. However, Phanes, the primordial one, used the eggshell to separate the universe and the microcosm of the world. 40 years after the held... Oh wait, no, that's the wrong person. 40 years after the held branches. 40 winters entombed the flames, and 40 summers churned the seas. The 7 sovereigns were vanquished, and the 7 nations submitted to the heavens. The primordial one, the great sovereign, began the creation of heaven and earth for our sake. That of which is creations which cherish the most, who would soon appear upon the earth. 400 years after the held branches. The mountains and rivers were made, and the seas and oceans accepted those who rebelled and those who could not yield. The primordial one and one of its shades created the birds of the air, the beasts of the earth, and the fish of the sea. Together, they also created flowers, grass, and trees before finally creating humans, our ancestors, numerous as the stars in the sky, uncountable as the sand on the shore. From that time, our ancestors made a covenant with the primordial one, and so entered into a new age. The year of the Ark's opening. The primordial ones had a sacred plan for the humans. As long as they were happy, it too rejoiced. The year after the ark's opening. The people worked the land, and so came the first harvest. The people mined and so reaped the first crop of the precious ore. The people gathered, and the first poems were written. The year of Jubilee. If there was hunger, the heaven would bring down food and rain. If there was poverty, the earth would bring forth its riches. If melancholy were to spread, the heavens would reply with their voices. The one taboo was to succumb to temptation, but the path to temptation had already been sealed. The funerary year. The second throne of the heavens came, and war was rekindled, as it was in the world's creation. That way, the heavens collapsed and the earth was rent asunder. Our ancestors and their ancestral land fell into this place during that conflict. The era of darkness had begun. The first year of darkness. The people of the Severan sovereigns had found refuge in the oceans, and the dragonaires and the debts ruled this particular place, which led war between them and our ancestors. Our ancestors chased them into the shadows with the light of 1,000 lanterns, and they hid those shadows, hunting us, but there was only darkness in its place, and so their hunting grounds were untrammeled. The prayer of the people turned into lamentations, for the primordial one and its 3 other shining shades could not bear. The parable of the sun. In the dark cavern, there lived a group of people who had never seen the light. Among them was a sage who had once seen the suns, and he told the gathered folk about what life under the sun was like, and about the great night to the sun. Seeing that which they could not comprehend, he lit a torch, and thus did people come to worship the flame, believing it to be the sun. They even got used to a life of darkness and fire. When the sage died, someone would monopolize the flame. Using it, they would cast a long shadow over the land. The parable of Lethid Lotus. A lotus that caused all who looked upon it to forget their troubles. The ship captain, searching for the way back to the surface, discovered a tribe of people who ate these lotuses. Some crew members stayed in that place. Others rejected the temptation. Life was a boundless ocean of suffering. We're only searching for a way home. Third year of darkness. We knew that the only one had not forsaken us as the ruler of time. She was the moment. She was every moment. She was the measure of 1,000 winds and the sun and the moon. She was every second of joy, every moment of rage, every instant of longing, every minute of obsession. She was a flash of delirium. We call her Kairos, or the ruler of unchanging world. We dare not speak her true secret name, and so I pen it here, only once and in reverse. Issaroth, but backwards, because I'm not reading that in front ways. The year of blindness. The sage's Aparax's wisdom was awakened, and he unveiled a light-bringing miracle from within her hands. So our ancestors began to build the Helios, with him as their leader. The Helios, you say? The year of sight, or the first year of sun and moon. Helios, the divine chariot of the sun, was finally completed. The white night came, and Evernight was banished. The year the sun and moon had begun. The second year of sun and moon. Our ancestors sought the returning way, for surely the war on the surface had ended by then. But the primordial one, the first throne, who had laid down a ban, preventing our ancestors from finding the path home. In that case, the primordial one must have defeated the second who came. Abrix was imprisoned by the order of the Sun Child. The parable? The parable of the 3. The king's gardener and the 3 spirits of the royal garden were in love, but the king wished to repair the beams of his pavilion, so he needed to cut down the tree with the most spiritual energy within it. The king was an incarnation of the primordial one, and the gardener could not devise such the sovereign of sovereigns, so he could only bring the plea to the king's priest, who was incarnation of Tokuyo Okami. The priest had pity on the gardener and said to him, "Go and cut the branches of the spirit tree down." And the gardener did so, and afterwards did the king ordered cutting the spirit tree down itself down. And the priest said, "Plant the spirit tree's branches in the ground." But the gardener said, "A spirit tree shall take 500 years to grow." The priest said, "Your one thought shall echo through eternity." And so the gardener planted the branches in his backyard. In an instant, the slim branches grew into a new tree, and the new tree spirit was a continuation of the past one. For it is the god of moments who is able to take these seeds from the moment into the past and into the future. The 10th year of sun and moon. Abrix was long gone. The events before sun and moon have been recorded sufficiently. Well, if I did not care to write things down just as they had happened, how could I consider myself a scribe of the Tokoyo Okami? Hark, I hear him armor without. Here, I shall stop writing. Of all the books to read in the official voice? No, for real. Isn't this like a recounting of... Oh my god, what is it called? What happened in Enkanomiya, if I remember correctly, like everyone, all the children who died, right? Okay, Volume 3. The lands beneath the apoptotic depths are vastly different from those on the surface, to the extent that all surface derived from common sense must be abandoned down below. All we formerly knew of the land and sea was given to us directly by the heavens. In this new world of ours, we must begin groping for even the simplest methodologies anew. Oh, you who come after and read these words, do not take the life you lead for normalcy. Even if after 100 or 1,000 years, people should grow used to the life down here, always remember, these days are neither sun nor moon or abnormal. Even if some sage were to draw us in the sun, there would surely be filthy wretches who borrow its light to cast long shadows over us. Hearing wretches in Klee's voice would be terrifying. This book is intended to help people understand the world they live in and to never forget our desire to return to the light. I'm slowly slipping into Sayu and I'm so sorry. This book has been constantly edited, redacted, and modified over the years. Even the name of this book's title has seen change from the apoptotic earth to Tokoyokoku before becoming Byakuyakoku. Later, due to the differences of Watasumi, the people of the depths would return to the sea's surface, but it seemed like apoptotic earth had some special meaning and is not universally chained throughout the text. Of wind and water, Byakuyakoku has no mountains to speak of, so it's pointless to speak of them. However, our priests and sages have detected something. Even in the depths, the power of this undying wind and the water still remain. The personification of the undying wind known as Tokoyo Okami and is poetically rendered the 1,000 winds or the 1,000 winds of time. Water, on the other hand, is the might of the Vishap realm, represented by the Visatmal Vishaps. We have already developed a certain field of study regarding the relationship between sunfire, wind, and water. As such, the hydrology and undying wind must be considered before undertaking any product of civil engineering. The borders of Byakuyakoku. The borders of Byakuyakoku are marked out by 3 corners. These marks the limits of the seesaw clash between the humans and the Vishaps. During the era of the Byakuyakoku, towers of the 3 realms were built at these 3 corners, used to harmonize the 3 realms. Their ancient names have been lost to time, and they were renamed after the coming of Watasumi. These towers are exceedingly important, and they are not locations aligned with either wind or water. Rather, the purpose is to stabilize the tendencies of Byakuyakoku and control the winds and waters. If these towers are to be imperiled, so would the entire nation. As such, they have been hidden among secret arts. Only the shrine maidens and the vassals of Watatsumi can summon the fourth, the Narrows. The Narrows were in the earliest times sandwiched between the mouth face and the area known as the Roundlands, thus earning that location its name. However, the exceedingly strange tectonic shifts in Byakuyo caused the Roundlands to collapse into the depths, thus causing the Narrows to widen significantly. The Serpent's Heart. From the first time our ancestors discovered this place, it had already played host to a unique phenomenon in which space itself might overlap with a certain locale. Later, it was those who came before us would utilize this phenomenon by creating the Serpent's Heart. It would be to guard secrets, imprison criminals, and worship the great imaginary serpent Ouroboros. In In the earliest times, this place was called Delphi, the land of snakes. This name did not change even after our arrival of Watatsumi Omikami. Ancient art depicts the scaliest serpent as Ouroboros and the coal-adorned serpent as Orobashi. Dainichi Mikoshi. The earliest name is from the place of Helios and the high tower built by the sage Aberaku, standing from earth, the element between wind and water. According to prophecy, this was likely the sun that the sage displayed, used to light those in the lightless caverns, and just as those prophecies suggested, it was also later used to cast a great shadow over the nation.
I love her voice. It's so cute, but I cannot do it.
Effective today, all experiments regarding the Dragonaires will be directed by the Watatsumi Omikami in person. All files preceding the founding year of the Watatsumi calendar have been destroyed. Dossier serial numbers shall no longer use as categories Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, and Epsilon, which use the ancient Watatsumi tongue. Instead, we shall use Earth, Water, Fire, Wind, Ether, and Void going forward. All quotes and notations are to be written within quotation marks. The following order of writing should be observed. The file, header, serial numbers, subject, author. Author can be omitted, or their internal title within the research lab may be used. Usage of a researcher's ancient Byakuyakoku and Kanomiya name or modern Watatsumi Narukami Inazuma name is forbidden. These experimental records are not to be used for the writings of diaries, love letters, or fantasy novels. The Dragonaires hereafter named Baptismal Vishaps or Plain Vishaps evolution is plain for all to see. Water 101 Dragonair Evolution 1. We have tried lowering the temperature in living environs of a young heat-resistant Vishap. As a result, they were weaker once matured. We suspect that this is because its body did not possess the seed required to resist such an environment. However, its descendants would all possess high body fat, greater precipitation towards sleep, and would suppress this cryo element. Please refer to the experimental data after the main text. The abnormal data derived from sample 3 is due to my assistant feeling sorry for the subject of the anti-hunger control group and feeding it serendipitously. When we placed their descendants into sweltering conditions, they would gain choose, like their ancestors, the heat-resistant trait. However, none of them would have developed traits indicative to pyro element thus far. We do not have enough data to reach an conclusion at the present, but we can make an educated guess at the baptismal Vishaps have the ability to waken the seed freely before maturation. Bishop mothers can also create new seeds to pass on to their descendants, and they should encounter herefore unseen, challenging environments. It can be said that even before encountering us, the people of Enkanomiya, the baptismal Bishops, have already stored a veritable armory within the bodies. The research of the intelligence agencies are astounding. Void 207 Bishop Intelligence Research. Though a screening process considering the rewards of punishments, although previous research indicates that screening is unnecessary, Bishops are and all adapters par excellence. The linguistics capabilities of Bishops 4 generations down are starting to approach that for a 12-year-old human student. Perhaps it might be more accurate to say that Bishops had their own methods of communication, and that they were displaying here is often the ability to learn. We believe that these experiments should be stopped. If not, we may be proven narrow-minded for having dismissed that last person who wrote a fantastical tale about Bishop people. Prophecy holds that Dragon Sovereign Water will be born in a human form. We must not let this thing happen in Kanomiya. All previous attempts at grafting had failed. Void 907, Watatsumi Omikami's Special Orders 1. Because they cannot accept Watatsumi's Omikami's blood, the Vishaps will fall victim to various adverse effects. Perhaps it is not yet strong enough, but we cannot be sure. Indeed, according to our rationalized Vishap evolutionary roadmap, we should have already bred the strongest Vishap available. The grafting can be considered a success. Void 907 Watatsumi Omikami's Special Orders 3. The rejection originates from the Vishaps having been the light realm, also known as elemental creatures, and thus being at odds with the human realm, of which Omikami and Okoro vassals are a part. All experiment logs are closed. No experiment conducted here resulted in the death of any dragon heirs, and they all lived to see the end of their days. Praise be to the Watatsumi Omikami, gracious and beneficent.
Question 1. What walks on 4 feet in the early morning, 2 feet during the day, and 3 at night?
Answer. A Vishap who transforms into a person to attend a ball, then breaks one of its legs and eventually ends up walking with a cane. Sages like this answer the most, and it's the children who get it right almost exclusively. For adults, it always smells like a horrible conspiracy when a Vishap turns into a human. According to prophecies of old, the Dragon of Water, the ancient lord of Vishaps, will definitely descend in the form of a human. However, for children, the answer to the question indicates the possibility of a mutual understanding. But it's not a good idea to make Vishaps sound adorable. Though such voices defang fear, they also lower the guard of the children. Dragon heirs of the depths have evolved to wield power of other elements and have lost since their purity. As such, the dragon water will no longer be born amongst their ranks. Question 2. With only one mouth, this being sometimes have 4 feet, sometimes 2 feet, and sometimes 3. Though unable to morph into other things, it is able to walk on the earth, swim in water, and fly in the sky. The more feet it walks on, the feebler it grows. What is this? Answer. A human. Humans crawl on their hands and feet as babies, 2 walks on legs as adults, and use a cane as elders. The answer is undoubtedly a human. Question 3. What talks with only one mouth but walks on 4 and 2 feet? Answer. Someone raising livestock. This riddle is a very ancient one. In the past, we can only understand the meaning of livestock from reading text. 4 legs refers to 4-legged animals like the ox, horse, and borset 4. After Byakuyakoku fell into the ocean depths, these animals died within 2 generations due to a lack of habitable land and food. Since the arrival of Watatsumi Omikami, some of us have returned to the sea's surface to build a home and interact with people there. Therefore, we have been able to review the names of all these animals. According to the vassal in Omikami's prophecy, we shall all move back to the sea's surface someday, so it is important to get these names right. Ox means cattle, horse means horse, and forest boar means forest boar. Question 4. Who are the 2 sisters who gave birth to each other every day? Answer. Day and night, or white night and evernight. This riddle is easy to understand. It alludes the succession of day and night, in which Byakuyakoku means the cyclical white night and evernight under the control of the Dainichi Mikoshi. Through the land was an everlasting night before the Dainichi Mikoshi was built. The light of day that people had seen remained unchanged. By the way, the 2 special astronomical phenomena of the Byakuyoku, the mirages of the Sin Shades, were at first indiscriminately referred to as the Ideolons. Oh, wait, that ties into Honkai, as seen as the 2 sides of the same coin. It was not until the arrival of Watatsumi Omikami that the difference of the Byakuyakoku was able to understand 2 phenomena and name them differently. Though the sun did not shine upon Byakuyakoku, the mirages that appeared in the white nights were named Sunfire Phantasms, and those of Evernight Ghostfire Phantasms. As time went by, both of them came to be referred as the Sunfire Phantoms, for they are essentially the same thing. Question 5. I am the Shadowborn of the Lord of Night. I am the wingless bird that rises from the earth to the sky. Those who shed tears in my presence feel no sorrow in their bosoms. Away with a gentle breeze I fade, and thus ends my fleeting light. Answer. The answer is smoke. Birds are winged creatures, and it's normal that they are not seen in Kanomiya. 6. A father has 12 children, then each giving birth to 60 daughters of different appearances. Of them, 30 are pale and 30 are dark. A whole family, not knowing death, will only fade away. Who is the father? Answer. The answer is the year. The people of Byakuyakoku may find parts about 60 pale or dark granddaughters a bit confusing, but everything will start to make sense once they crack question 4. There used to be a sequel to this riddle in ancient times.
It roughly said that every granddaughter would give birth to 12 descendants, and each of them would have 60 children. Every such child later on would give birth to another 60, who would go on to have children on their own. This would continue until at least all the offspring would together give birth to one and only primordial child, Tokoyo Okami, the mother of 14 billion years. Watasumi Omikami forbade people from spreading this riddle. In the myths of age past, every living being in this world had his own kingdoms. Mondstadt was a forest in that age, a playground of the boars. In the forest was the Boar Kingdom, where everyone lived happily under the reign of the Boar King. The king had a lovely young daughter who had the prettiest snout, the whitest tusks, and the smoothest fur in the whole kingdom. The Boar Princess, beautiful and kind, gave the juiciest and sweetest fruits to her subjects every day. From sweet and sour berries to crisp apples to delicious tree mushrooms, the Boar Princess always shared her delicacies first with her friends. Every boar in the kingdom adored their king and princess, and every day they praised them so. Oink oink, bless our king. As long as he reigns over us, we shall never starve. Oink oink, bless the gentle animal Archon for giving our king such a kind and polite princess. There are some words in the margin written in tiny handwriting. Dada, if I don't eat candy every night and I pray every day, will I turn into a wild piggy? I want to be a wild piggy because they're so tasty. I don't know if you would want to be a wild piggy, but sure, we'll go with that. North of the Boar Forest was a frozen tundra. The playful Barbatos had not reached those lands and so remained covered by ice and snow. Every creature who ventured there risked freezing their paws and hoofs off. It's too cold! It's too cold! It's freezing! My claws are going to shatter! Even the bravest, strongest Boar King could not withstand the frigid tundra. Oink, oink, oink! My frozen snout is turning purple! There lived but a single lone wolf pup in that place. The childish handwriting at the bottom of the page reads, Dada, why does the little doggy have paws that don't freeze off in the cold?
The pup was a carefree child who had bright blue eyes and slick gray fur. When he got angry, he looked like the wolf had relief atop the Mondstadt Cathedral. But one day, when he was hunting in the forest, he ran into the evil squirrel sorcerer, Baka. Of all the beings in the ancient forest, none were the more evil than Bakwa, not even demons and dragons. Bakwa despised everything nice and swore to transform beauty into ugliness, to turn light into dark. At the sight of the joyful wolf, anger boiled inside him. He cursed, Squeak, squeak, angry am I shall spike his heart with the coldest ice, and he will never again know the meaning of hope. With that said, Bakwa began to curse the pup with his magic. But the rash pup gobbled him up just like that, without the slightest warning. Bakwa was so furious that he cursed the pup using the most foul and insulting words ever uttered by a squirrel. The pup felt noise coming from his mouth, and only then did he realize his mistake. Aroo! I am sorry, Mr. Squirrel. I thought you were edible. The pup wished to apologize to the squirrel, but he felt his throat tighten and then loosen. The squirrel slid down his stomach with a gulp. A sheet of paper bearing the fine handwriting is taped to the page. Lily, is this why you should eat very cautiously when you're outside?
Oh, her voice is so hard. It's like, it's up in like the nasal passages of her voice, but it's still very like airy and high pitched. It's very hard to do.
No one knew what chemical reaction occurred when the pup's stomach, but the Wubaka's curse magically came into effect. Because of this curse, the pup's heart was pierced by an icicle. The pup became cold and mean forever and after, and whenever other animals showed kindness to him, he would just repay them with the harshest words or the most woeful deeds. In the end, every animal loathed him. From then on, every wolf in the forest spoke of the pup in this way. Woof, what selfish wolf he is, such an obnoxious kid. Woof, woof, what a heartless wolf he is, let's stay away from him. One by one, the pup lost all its friends. The forest welcomed the lonely pup no more, so she had no choice but to head north. The blizzards that blew in the northern tundra kept most creatures away, but with his heart already frozen solid, the pup was no longer afraid of the cold. He decided to settle down there and became the lone wolf that roamed the tundra. A young girl has written in the corners of the page, Dada, but where did the Wubakwa go?
One day, the Boar Princess heard about the pup and he was deeply saddened by his story. So she asked her people for advice on how to defrost his heart and turn him back to the sweet former self. She asked and asked, but only the wise fox and the elderly turtle knew the answer. Ack, ack, ack. Only sincerity and fire can melt such an evil ice. Ack, 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 the fox replied. Friendship demands sacrifice. No friendships come without sacrifices. I apologize for not knowing how to make funnier sounds, the trustworthy Grandpa Turtle said. The clever Boar Princess knew right away what she had to do. She dried her tears and curtsied to the two wise animals. Oink, oink, thank you. I would like for you to come and see the pup with me so that you can be the first to witness our friendship. When the fox and the turtle heard the Boar Princess was willing to invite them on a royal trip, their hearts were filled with joy. They set out with the princess and headed north. A handwritten note seemingly from the young girl's father is taped to the page. Turtles can't make noises no matter how hard they try. The reason Grandpa Turtle apologizes for this is just because he's very polite. That's hard. Her voice is hard to pin down.
And so the princess and her two wise companions arrived in the snow-swept hinterland of the far north. Ice and snow covered the land as far as the eyes could see. Neither the biggest, bravest animals, nor even the weasel, who was the most skilled digger of them all, could find much as a single blade of soft grass or a single piece of juicy fruit. The princess was shivering from head to tail of her freezing cold, yet she was undaunted. Without even looking back, she pressed on deeper into the frozen wasteland. The wise fox and the trustworthy turtle could not bear the piercing wind and the fierce snow. They begged the princess, "Ack, ack, ack, if His Majesty the King knew that you were adventuring on such cold and dangerous place as this, he would be very worried. Let's head back home." "Ack, ack, ack," exclaimed the fox. "Yes, I agree. I fear that the snowstorm will get stronger and colder with each passing second. Let us at least rest a while and continue our journey once the wind has stopped and the sun is out. Once again, I apologize for not knowing how to make funny sounds," reasoned the turtle. It was to no avail. The persevering princess did not heed the advice of her wise companions, but insisted that they continue to press on in the bitter cold of the far north. For what nobler cause would one pursue this world than rescuing lost kin and rekindling lost friendships? Onwards, they continued through the ice and snow, until their paws and hooves became purple with the cold, until each breath they exhalted turned into ice, which became one with the swirling blizzard around them. Then, at the icy peak of a tall mountain, next to a frozen river which, in spite of everything, still flowed, albeit with icicles rather than water, the princess met a spirit, swaying to and fro into the freezing wind. An ancient race of wise spirits lived upon that ice-capped mountain, and they had no physical form, but possessed great magical power. "Oink, oink, are you the master of this place? Oh, please, oh spirit, will you guide us through the snowstorm?" The princess politely posed her question of her hooves, now numb from the cold, trembling in the snow. The wise fox and the trustworthy grandpa also looked expectantly at the spirit in the snowstorm. As they gazed, their paws and flippers respectively numb from the cold, trembling in the snow. Whoosh, whoosh. The spirit of the snowstorm spoke softly. "Of course, but with shh, whoosh. In return, I will sap your energy. The further forward you go in the storm, the more tired and hungry you'll become. Though I assure you, it would not be threatening. I hope..." Shh, whoosh. "Oink, oink. This is, after all, the spirit of the snowstorm," pondered the princess. "And I am also in the company of my two wisest, most caring members of my family. Whatever may happen, we will always be able to find a way." Without a moment's hesitation, the princess granted the spirit of the snowstorm her request. The wise fox and the trustworthy Grandpa Turtle had no time at all to formulate, let alone articulate, any remuneration. "Oink, oink, I do declare this deal a fair one. Now lead us to the wolf pup." And so the spirit turned to an ice stream and carried the persevering princess over to the tall mountain. After venturing in the bitter cold with the swirling storms, the Boar Princess finally saw the pup. Covered in ice, the poor pup's once bright blue eyes now grow dim, and he'd all but forgotten how to bark. "Aroo, you must come at this right moment, for I haven't had lunch yet." Hearing these words, the kind Boar Princess could not help but shed tears. Her warm tears seemed to melt a little of the ice at the tip of the pup's heart. "Aroo, why are you crying?"
Oink oink. You're going to starve out here. I have never seen such misery in my kingdom. I will sacrifice everything to feed your hungry belly. The pup was stupefied by her words. Ooh, miss, you must be mad. No one has ever dared to say such a thing to me. But when the pup saw the determination in her eyes, his frozen heart melted some more. Nope, that's why I will sacrifice 2 of the wildest and most caring members of my family just to feed you. It is for the sake of our friendship. The fox knew what horror she meant and attempted to run, but he was pinned to the ground by the pup and the Boar Princess. Grandpa Turtle was so frightened by the sight that he retreated into a shell. The pup and the Boar Princess enjoyed a delicious appetizer of fox out in the snow. Next, they found a cave, picked a few mushrooms, and built a fire with some moss, and treated themselves to a tasty turtle soup. The pup felt delight of making friends for the first time he could remember. His frozen heart melted away completely, and he shed tears of joy. The princess took the pup by his paw, and the 2 merrily returned to their home. Wedged between the last 2 pages of the card bearing elegant handwriting, Honey, I think it would be best if we donated this one to the library.
I'm exhausted. Thank you everyone so much for joining this lore stream. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully we'll do some for Honkai Star Railroad at some point. Maybe for funsies.